Voice of the People. I'm your host, Kenneth Wright Sr. I love you enough to tell you the truth, and I respect you enough to give you the facts. I want to thank you for joining us this Saturday morning. You could have been somewhere else, but you decided to be here with us on 1530 AM WASC, the number one radio station in upstate. We want to thank you for that. We want to give you a special shout out to Mr. Ed Waddell, the number one radio man in upstate. We love him for what we do. And I'm yours truly. I'm your host of the Voice of the People. My name is Kenneth Wright Sr. I love you enough to tell you the truth and respect you enough to give you the facts. I like to thank you and talk to you and stretch your imagination and talk to you outside the box to let you know what's going on in your community. And my motto is simply this: yesterday is gone, tomorrow is not promised, but today. Right now we have that, and that's a blessing from God, and we want to thank God for today and what we do with today. Shows our appreciation. God's grace and mercy He has bestowed upon us. I'd like to give you a brief dialogue today. But on a very serious note, it's been a very tough week. My heart is heavy. Mind is just whirling around. Things have been happening all over the United States. Killing of police officers, that's a tragedy. Killing of the two young black men in Baton Rouge and Minnesota, that's truly a tragedy. There's been a lot of discussion. Even the President of the United States, Mr. Barack Obama, did an excellent job on television the other night talking about how we must come together, how much we must recognize fault on both sides, and the police must take responsibility for how they engage with us, and we must take responsibility how we support law enforcement in our communities, how we present ourselves, and how we teach our children to respect the men in blue. And the men in blue likewise must respect us in our community. So it's going to be an interesting show. Thank you for joining. I'd like for you to tell your friends and family, to tune in right now. I'm going to have a very important conversation. I think President Obama did it best when he explained Black Lives Matter. Simply means that black folks in the United States for the last century has been focal point of a lot of incidents that's resulted in death. And so the loss of black lives has been disproportionate for us folks in this country as a minority. And so it's important that we make the statement that black lives matter. And we do that not out of disrespect for all other lives, but we just want to be included in the human race. We want to be respected. And that's our way of protesting. It's our way of getting the folks know, we're not quite satisfied with the way things are going in this country. There's a lot of racial divide. We're not divided as most folks think we are, but we are divided. And all over this country we have incidents of racism and discrimination and sexism. So in this country we're at a turning point. We can come together and move forward, can continue to separate and to hate each other and destroy the world in which we live. I love you enough to tell you the truth. I respect you enough to give you the facts. Sometimes it's difficult for me to tell the truth. Sometimes it's not popular. Times require the truth, requires a spirit of peace. It also challenges us as individuals to talk about things as they really are. And in our community, as always, we're challenged. We're surviving and striving, and also dealing with our personal problems and dealing with systemic racism as it's presented to us. In our everyday lives, most black folks will tell you, particularly black men, and President Obama bears witness to this. When the blue light comes on and you look in the rearview mirror, if you're a black male, there's a lot that runs through your mind. There's a degree of concern, a degree of fear, and there's you're unsettled because you watch TV, you know the history of America, you know that black men have been the target of some law enforcement officers. I want to put a clarification in there right now. Me personally, I'm an ex-police officer, son in law enforcement. So as a father, I pray for him and I worry for him. I'm so proud that he's made a decision for public service to protect and serve the community. I think it's an honorable profession. I worry because of his humanity, and I worry because of his kindness. But I understand that he's properly trained, and he's made a decision to live that life, and I'm proud of it. And so I am in support of law enforcement. I think most of us in our community are in support of law enforcement, but we're not in denial. We know that there's a lot of problems, and it comes to light. And I think the challenge that we have in our minds as we watch TV and then we see the evidence come forth, and we see the video cameras, and we see the lack of use of some officers willfully not using body cameras, it makes you wonder. And so, but thank God that bystanders like you and myself and as normal citizens that around with Facebook Live, you can't erase that. So that some of the things that we think are happening in our community and prove it nowadays, it's a video right in front of our eyes, and so it's concerning to all of us that we're not being denial, and that we understand that there's some bad apples within law enforcement. There's some bad apples within the community, but we have to come together to find solutions. But I think an issue that I'm going to talk about this morning, and number one, the reality of it is in most communities in South Carolina, around this country, we have separate communities, and that's part of the problem a lot of times with law enforcement. As in these particular cases, we have law enforcement officers who are white and police in a black community. Distrust from the black community towards law enforcement officers, and there's distrust that law enforcement have towards the black community because of their history, because of the concentrated areas of poverty and crime and unemployment and mental health problems, the result of societal problems, single parents, kids not having opportunities for jobs, mentorships, and recreational activities. The whole situation causes some concern. So what I want to talk about today, not how we talk about and address problems after a tragedy, because after all, in Spartanburg County, we have not had a tragedy. We not have had a white police officer shoot black male under questionable situations. But you know and I know that we've had our share of problems in Spartanburg County and the city of Spartanburg, interactions between black community and law enforcement. And when you talk about it in that regard, it's very simple, but it goes a little deeper than that. In the black community, we are divided up as well. See, in Spartanburg County, black folks represent about 20% of the population, and a lot of the blacks had moved out of the inner city and they moved out to the suburbs, and so they are truly without a voice. Case in point, in Spartanburg County, we have a county council. We have several members, I think, on the board. We only have one black county council member, and that's Attorney Michael Brown, and so he among seven. And so, in that particular case, we're represented symbolically, but for us having power and influence on 1 out of 7, that doesn't translate to any power. So that's a problem. Then in the city of Spartanburg, we have the black population is about 50%, and we have 7 persons on city council. So we have 3 persons of color. So that's nice, and Erica Bronson, Henderson Myers. So you see that city, we have a black chief of police. In the county, we have a white / Cherokee Republican sheriff. And so watch yourself. You would have the establishment, you would have the government speaking for the people, and I think that's a bad situation when the people do not have a voice. I read something in the paper. Excuse me. That's why we like to have this show, because this is the voice of the people, and we like to talk about things other folks don't talk about, and we like to give a voice to the voiceless. Now, we had an article in the paper, I think, in the Spartanburg paper. I think it was Thursday, July the 14th, and the article was at a panel discussion. Title was "Building Positive Relationships." Residents and leaders discuss how to improve relations between the police and community. Now, the community leaders and activists came together at the worship center in Roebuck Wednesday night to talk about relationships between African American community and law enforcement in Spartanburg. So Spartanburg, in my mind, would include the county and the city. But what was absent at that meeting was Chief Thompson, the chief of police for the city of Spartanburg. And I want to make a point here. Out of all the discussion with the 5 law enforcement officers being ambushed and killed in Dallas, Texas, with in Baton Rouge and Minnesota, our sheriff for Spartanburg County, Chuck Wright, has not made a formal statement as it relates to Black Lives Matter, as it relates to relationships in the community, and as it relates to Black Lives Matter. Our chief of police for the city of Spartanburg has not made a statement as well. We don't know his political disaffiliation, but he presents himself as a Christian, and so does Chuck Wright. So I don't know whether that's a qualification for the job, but I do know it runs right up to the fence when you have separation of church and state. Tax dollars in the county and the city should be for a person that's neutral. But that leaves for another conversation next couple of weeks. But at this panel, they included Michael Brown, the Spartanburg County Councilperson. He's one of 7. He's the president of the Spartanburg chapter of NAACP, which is in the city of Spartanburg. They excluded the presidents of the West Side NAACP and the county NAACP. So you had 1 out of 3 NAACP organizations present. You had Lieutenant Kevin Bobo, a spokesperson for Spartanburg County Sheriff Department. I guess he represented Sheriff Chuck Wright. Then you had Miss Priester. She's an anchor with Now Network. And you had a candidate from the Republican Party / Independent Party, Mr. Russell Lynch. He's a candidate for Spartanburg County Sheriff Department. I don't know whether he's presenting himself as totally as a candidate or as a community active. Or I've seen him at some of the NAACP meetings in Spartanburg. So he has the distinction of being a Republican / independent candidate for sheriff that hangs around the NAACP. And so that's politics in its purest form. And so what you have is you have a panel discussion with county council persons, Mr. Michael Brown, employees of the sheriff department, the lieutenant, a former employee and career law enforcement person from Spartanburg Sheriff Department, and is running for the position of a sheriff in November, and he's a lifelong Republican and now most recently an independent. So that's the type of panel that you have that's going to have a discussion within the county and the city about relationships between Black community and law enforcement. And what was absent from that dialogue was the voice of the people. We have at least 50 ministers and leaders of the faith in the county and the city, and they're prominent and they are highly educated and very opinionated, and they were excluded from this. And so what you had was a panel from the county of one elected official, a news person, and law enforcement being represented. And so you didn't truly have anybody from the community there talking. You didn't have any other elected officials. So you had out of the whole county and the city, you had Mr. Michael Brown as a spokesperson for the county. Then you had Mr. Michael Brown as a spokesperson for 3 NAACP branches. And I don't know whether he was speaking as an individual, or whether he was speaking to the wishes of the collective wishes of the NAACP in the city of Spartanburg, and also on the west side and the county. I think not. And so what we have here, you have a community where things are happening all over the world, and race relations and racism is active, and we're trying to build relationships, and we're excluding folks. And so this is an example, particularly in the Black community. The voices of 95% of the people are disregarded, or denied, or ignored. And then you have one person from a personal perspective speak for a whole county and the city. I think that's dangerous. I don't think it's effective, and I think it's an insult to the Black community. And so when you look at your community and you look at forming relationships and developing trust and with the city and the county, it has to be respect, and there has to be trust on both sides of it. There's been an ongoing concern in the county because the county has about the Black population about 20%, and they're not represented in the sheriff department in positions of leadership and deputy sheriffs. They do hire a fair degree folks in the jail But for the more meaningful jobs and the higher paying jobs and the leadership jobs, there's some concern that we black folks in the county have been denied that opportunity. Now, for the city, it's kind of hard to tell where we're at for its relationships between the citizens and law enforcement. We have a chief of police who has not made a statement, so we don't know how he stands on this issue about violence against black males. We had an issue about a while back, body cameras, so we think that's a step forward if it's implemented by the city and the county. So oftentimes when you want to put your finger on the pulse and find out what's going on in the community, you have to talk to the real people. And I've been around to about 10 or 15 barbershops and hair salons and talked to people in various churches, particularly the small churches, and a lot of those folks feel fearful and intimidated by law enforcement. A lot of them feel like if they speak out that they're heard, and feel like their jobs are being in jeopardy, so that's a form of bullying and intimidation. So I think if you really want a true indicator of what's going on in the community as you want to judge the relationships, I think to talk to one person represent close to 70,000 people. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think that's an example of how underdeveloped the black community is in Spartanburg County in the city, because we have a low voter turnout rate. We have some ministers that are absent from the issues and the conversation and the panel discussions, and everything has been reduced down to persons speaking to the best interests of everybody, but we're not sure whether they would be in a position to jeopardize their best interests. That's a good way of putting it. Folks who are part of the system, I think that it's a challenge to take a critical look at the system, see what's wrong when you're very much a part of it. And so that's why it's so important when we develop the community and we develop leadership and we strive to have a voice to express how we feel and what we're experiencing, is that we take a sample of the whole community. See, in the black community, we have a tradition of letting the talented 10th speak for the rest of the 90%. That is part of the reason why the Black Lives Movement came into existence, was the old guard, the conservative black professionals are out of touch with 95% of the black community. So if you look at Spartanburg in the city, if you take the elected officials off the table, take the ministers off the table, what do we have? And so that shows you that there's a lot of work to do, that we should be about developing community leaders, folks in neighborhood associations, folks in social organizations, regular folks, working folks and young folks and retired folks, so we can have some leadership across the board. I think that's part of the reason why we have such a low participation in activities in the community, and even in getting folks registered to vote and voting. And we also have a crisis in our community that's an elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. About 50% of the people in the black community have abandoned the black church. And the black church has been so vital and so important to our progress and to our stability and to our culture. And because of a new wave of faith-based leadership and the prosperity mentality and the materialistic type personalities that come forth in the community, that a lot of folks, and particularly, it's just been documented, 80% of your black men have abandoned the black church. And so what you have in most communities, you have a lot of women and children. About 50% of the women and children would be supportive of the church, and you have about 20% of the men. And so you have a separation of the church and the unchurched. So that further divides our community, and that's evident by the Black Lives Movement. We don't have a strong one here, but around the state, a lot of young black folks who feel that experiencing the injustices of a norm of their life is too much to bear. So they want to organize, they want to speak out, and try to make a difference. But there's a generational divide between folks in the Black Lives Movement and the black leadership in the community. We're talking about the elected officials, the ministers, and the professionals, which represent a very small percentage of the black community, about 10%. and you see how fragmented and how disconnected we are as a community. And that's why when it comes down to having a community meeting and a panel, it is evident by who represent us that the voices of all the people have been denied and it's not valued. So that's why when we try to organize and move forward to get something done, folks who vote on it's the leadership so disengaged from the community that it's impossible to get anything done that reflects the entire community. Love enough to tell you the truth. I respect enough to give you the facts. It's just important that we have a discussion. And I think the incident of the two black men being murdered, shot, interaction with police, the jury is still out on that. Some people are going to be, quite surprised when the dust clear on whether the law enforcement officers were in fact justified or not justified in deadly force. But we have to wait to see how that turns out. But the main thing that I was trying to share with you today is that time has passed. Can be represented by 10% and 5%. I think that divides the community. I think we become the victim of classism, which is not good when you're talking about building a community up and getting everybody involved and getting everybody trained better citizens and having a voice and knowing about the issues and get involved in the process. And so I encourage you to talk to your neighbor, gather together, 4 or 5 together, that's a group. Be sure that you hold your elected officials accountable, that you go to the school board meeting. I went to the school board meeting a couple of months ago. There was not one parent there. So we got to do a better job in supporting our children and attending the school board meeting and holding the school board persons accountable to the students and the parents. We must go to county council meeting, underrepresented there. We have very small numbers. And for city council, we got to be sure that we pack that place out, let the county know and let the city know that we positive note that we're going to involve, we're going to ask questions, we want things to be done fairly, we want additional opportunities for our children and for ourselves. And whatever leadership that we have, I think it's important that we hold them accountable. A lot of people believe in protests, and I believe in protesting as well. But I think you need to start out by boycott. You can do that on an individual basis. You don't need a group to boycott. And if you want to see what a difference it makes, talk to your church members and family and friends, all your social organizations, your fraternities, sororities, social groups, and all that. And I think a very effective boycott would be to create a tradition of family and supporting family and personal relationships in our community. And every Sunday and Saturday, let's start sitting around the table having a meeting in our households. Let's start cooking and preparing food, and let's quit eating out on the weekend and see can we get somebody's attention. I can guarantee you if in this community, in the city, we're 50%, in the county, we're 20%. If you start cooking on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, don't spend your dollars in these restaurants and whatever. I think that somebody will come around and ask you what's wrong, because decreased profit by 20 or 30%. Folks want to make a deal and folks want to talk to you. I'm your host, Kenneth Myers Sr. I love you enough to tell you the truth, respect enough to give you the facts. Thank you for listening. Thank you for dialoguing with us. If you agree, said, hey, that's great. If you disagree, that's great as well, because that means that you have engaged your mind and you got an opinion about it. And your opinion is always right because it's yours. And my opinion is right sometimes because it's mine. But we just want to stimulate you to think about what's going on in your community and just take a closer look and exercise your right to vote and let your voice be heard. And that's simply why we do this show. It's called The Voice of the People. We want to be a voice for the voiceless, and we want the 90% to have something to do with what the 10% talk about. So I'm your host, Kenneth Myers. I love you enough to tell you the truth. Respect enough to give you the facts. And so next Saturday, you get registered to vote, read the newspaper, go to your school board meeting, county council meeting, city council meeting, go to your neighborhood association meeting, NAACP meeting, urban lead. Is there an urban lead around? I don't know. They don't say a lot. But let's get involved and let's make this community a better place. And I think if we build up our community, that puts us in a position to have a better relationship with our community, and particularly law enforcement. So until I see you the next time, you pray for me, and I'll pray for you.